Did Brian Hooker do something to Lynette? Lynette disappeared over Easter weekend and she has never been seen again. Nothing of hers has been found on a beach, has been found floating. She just allegedly went over the side of the dinghy and was never seen again. Do we believe this story? We had a great conversation on the TikTok, and I gotta tell you, things aren't as they seem, and I believe Brian absolutely harmed Lynette and then concealed her body. Let's chat about what we know and information about this case that we might want to consider. Check this out. Lynette Hooker has been missing for months, and her husband, Brian Hooker, nowhere to be found. Are we on a manhunt? If you're unfamiliar with this case, this is Lynette Hooker. She's 55 years old. She's a Michigan mom, and when she retired, she sold everything with her husband of 25 years. They sold everything, purchased a yacht, fixed that yacht up, and set a sail. They wanted to enjoy their golden years, living the boater's life. Lynette Hooker has been missing since Easter weekend, and she's never been seen or heard from since. Her husband of 25 years, Brian Hooker, which was initially arrested on April 8th and released from jail on April 13th without charges, he stated he would not leave the Bahamas without his wife. And the next day he boarded a plane and he took off for the United States, and he's never been back to the Bahamas since. Lynette's family is desperate for answers. We just heard from her mom about the second round of searches by our U.S. Coast Guard. Unfortunately, they did not find Lynette. Fortunately, they did acquire additional evidence, hopefully to be used against Brian in the near future. For 6 months being on the water, things turned very, very serious, and it scared Lynette. Her and Brian got into a major fight where he asphyxiated her, and something snapped or popped in her neck, and it scared her. The next day, she packed up her stuff and left, but he said he wished he would have finished the job and threw her overboard as she was leaving to go home. I'm not sure how I feel about this last trip with the Coast Guard because I felt like it was just too short. I felt like they should have been out there a little bit longer to look for Lynette Hooker. But we have to remember, this is the Bahamas. This is not U.S. jurisdiction, and they had to ask for permission to be out there. That may be the reason why they couldn't stay too long. As reported yesterday, there are several key factors that lead us to believe that they made it back to the Soulmate, their yacht. The Apple Watch, the satellite, the lights coming on the yacht at 7:47, witnessing a horizontal flare at 8 p.m., a splash at 9:30, flashlights on top of the boat around 12:30 midnight. And as you heard, there was a splash heard that evening, a very deep, heavy splash. And now the Coast Guard has been to the Bahamas in search for Lynette on 2 separate occasions. But the good news is it sounds like the U.S. Coast Guard has officially taken over this case because the Bahamian police, they just don't have the resources for this type of case, and our federal government does. So they handed the dinghy over to the U.S. Coast Guard, securing that very much needed piece of evidence. Will we ever find Lynette? I really don't know. I know she's out there somewhere, and I know Brian did something to her, in my heart and in my soul. I just hope Brian confesses what he has done and allow his family, at least what he used to call family, bury their loved one so she's not out there like a piece of garbage. We recently heard from a neighbor on News Nation with Jesse Weber, and this neighbor described living across the street from Lynette's mom, However, after Lynette and Brian sold everything that they owned to purchase that sailboat, they stayed at their mother's house. And the neighbors said that their relationship was tumultuous. Everyone knew that Brian was an abuser, and she's hoping she can go back in time and get some of that footage for law enforcement just to prove his behavior. She stated Lynette and him took late night walks, but were ultra private. And what do we know about domestic violence situations? Most of the people live in seclusion, and they live in seclusion to hide the abuse. So was that just a missed sign? We're still looking for Lynette Hooker. If you have any information, which again, they were on the water, on their sailboat in the middle of nowhere with very limited people that were around them or could even hear them. It is my position, Lynette and Brian made it back to the Soulmate. A fight almost immediately ensued within 20 minutes of them being on this boat. And by 8 p.m. or 8:30, I believe Lynette was deceased. And I believe by 9:30, Brian was putting into action concealment and a alibi. And his alibi was it took 9 hours to drift across the Sea of Abaco in order to justify all the time that had been had. He did something to Lynette, in my opinion. Let me know yours. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Bullhorn Betty channel. God bless. From the East Coast to the West Coast, we are everywhere true crime is. We are asking for the public's help. We are searching in the woods. We are doing what it takes here on the Bullhorn Betty channels to find answers to the most alarming cases we have been watching on the news. I can tell you personally that I have traveled this entire country seeking these answers and bringing that content right here to you here on the Bullhorn Betty channels and Bullhorn Betty Crime Stories. We are happy with the work that we've done. We brought many answers to the public, and we have defied mainstream media in our pursuit of the truth in these cases. We will continue to work, we will continue to fight for these victims, and we will continue to tell their stories here on my channels. Welcome to the Bullhorn Betty brand of channels and the Coffee Club. Thank you for your love, thank you for your support, and more importantly, thank you for allowing me to bring these victims' stories to each and every one of you, advocating for each of these victims. God bless you. God bless America, and more importantly, God bless our victims. Hey guys, Bullhorn Betty here, covering the case of Lynette Hooker. This is Brian Hooker right here, her husband of 25 years, the only person she had been with in a really long time. And this is the kicker. So according to Brian, they were coming back after a day of drinking on a dinghy, heading back to their boat, the Soulmate, when a lone wave came and knocked Lynette off the dinghy. She had the key, the safety key. So as soon as she went overboard, it disabled the engine. So he was kind of stuck with her being pushed one way and his boat being pushed another way. Almost like this perfect storm with like the whitewater rapids, you know, as she was swept out to sea. And then he washed ashore 9 hours later on the other coast of the Sea of Abaco, saying his wife disappeared out to sea. So that's kind of where we're starting off this evening. His boat has been seized. The U.S. Coast Guard just finished the second tour. Come on, Delilah. Just finished the second tour of searching and have already headed back and most likely already are back to the state of Florida. And they went back not empty-handed, but not with Lynette Hooker. Lynette Hooker still to this day has not been found. So, well, he should not have been allowed to. I agree with that. Smell the flowers. He should not have been. He should not have been able to leave the island, but he was. He wasn't under arrest. Even right now, we were just talking about the YT channel, or on my YT channel. I just did a live kind of on some news that I'm going to be breaking to you guys here. He hasn't been arrested. He hasn't been charged with a crime. They have nothing to really hold him here. People are saying he's not even in the country. Now, while I don't believe that's necessarily the case, even if he wasn't in the country, he's not doing anything illegal. That's why we have a question mark, kind of over to the side here. It's manhunt question mark. Are we in a manhunt? And I don't believe we are, because I still think we're we're one test away from him being arrested. We're one test result, data, whatever, from him being arrested. We all know, I mean, if you look at the entirety of this case, they were the only two people together, right? They don't have company. They don't have people over. They don't have, they don't have a network of friends that visit regularly. Please don't start going for the ball. Oh, she's going for the ball. Okay, we might be. Come back up here. You're going to have to sit. Come on. She's going for the squeaky toy. Come, get your butt up here. She's going for the squeaky toy. If you guys don't know, this is my dog, Delilah. And I didn't want her squeaking. She was about to go for the squeaky toy. So, in an effort to finish the show before she starts squeaky, I figured I'd call her. But at the end of the day, Brian hasn't been there. We know that he left, but they were the only people together. And we were kind of talking about the Haro case. Remember, maybe many of you guys don't, but Emmanuel Haro. If you guys are in the chat and you guys remember the case of Emmanuel Haro, where was that? Out in Yucaipa, California. How I remembered that name. It must be a good day for the brain cells today. That's all I'm saying. But Yucaipa, California. Is that right? Was it Yucaipa? Yeah, Yucaipa, California. And, the reason why that case was a little easier to conclude with no body, it was because the person was an infant. They relied on nobody else other than that, that child relied only on their parents. The child's an infant. Emmanuel was an infant, 7-month-old infant. But I think the same, even though Lynette is not an infant, I think the same process can be used for Brian because there was nobody else. I mean, one of the biggest challenges in a no-body homicide criminal action, one of the hardest things to overcome is that you don't have the proof to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, let me word this correctly, because that sounds wrong. You don't have enough evidence to prove, or like the proverbial smoking pew in the person's hand, right? So you've got you have to exclude every single other person in a circumstantial case like a no-body homicide criminal action. You've got to exclude everyone else, and that basically has already been done in this case because they weren't together. They were always together. There weren't other people with them. They had like a couple friends that were also part of this boat life, and we've heard them on the news. Blaine Stevenson and his wife, really nice people. They thought there was something, not at first, they didn't think anything at first was hinky, but because everything was just kind of spinning, they decided to record what Brian was saying was going on just so they could re-listen to it later to understand. And I think it was innocent in nature, but then they were glad that they did record it after it appeared he wasn't being truthful. I think they started getting skeptical. And now they're just like, Brian has MIA'd everybody. Nobody knows where he is. We're hearing that his brother might have a cabin out in the woods that has no electric, no water, no. I'm just like, man, I mean, he was roughing it in the, on a yacht, did he rough it from a yacht with plumbing, indoor plumbing to, a cabin in the woods with, no electricity? It's just, I've been hearing a lot, related to this case, and some people even speculate that he's out of the country. And in all fairness, I don't think there's anything we could do to stop him. I don't think there's anything that the government can do to stop him. I mean, short of arresting him for a crime and keeping him here right now, he has no charges. The government just can't hold you against your will. That's illegal, right? That's a civil rights violation. We were just talking about civil rights, over in Pima County. So they can't do that. I don't know where Brian is. I know that I've had my feelers out. This is what I know. I'll tell you. I'll be honest with you. The Daily Mail's badass. I don't know if you guys have watched the Daily Mail or read the Daily Mail or whatever. They're photographers, they're investigators, they're pretty badass, okay? I've been out in the field with them, okay? Multiple cases I've done front and center from front of people's houses. And so I know some of their photographers and stuff like that, but they hunt. Like, think about it this way, whether you liked it or not, in the Idaho 4, Dylan Mortensen, everybody didn't know what happened. They were able to track her down and get her leaving her house to go for a jog. They have investigators and journalists that are pretty top notch in getting the pictures. So I've literally been waiting for the Daily Mail to finally capture Brian, coming up for air somewhere, and they have it. So I'm like, he's got I keep wondering if he's out of the country. It does, I gotta say, it does sit on your shoulders. Did he leave? Did he go to another country? But then there's a piece of me, and you hear about all these law enforcement people, and they're like, no, they've got him under a watchful eye, right? We keep hearing something to that. I mean, it's provided to us a little different ways, but I mean, they're basically telling us that they believe, they're alleging, they're speculating. They don't know for a fact because none of them have direct connects to any of the investigators in the case, but them being the professional and in this field previously, even though they're all retired, they're like, oh no, they've got a watchful eye on him. No, they know exact. Maybe we don't know where he is, but I'm confident that law enforcement knows where he is. Well, let me just remind people of something. If you guys see at the top, I'm Bullhorn Betty. Where did I get Bullhorn Betty's name? You know where I got Bullhorn Betty's name? I got it from being in front of Brian Laundrie's house. Remember Gabby Petito? Remember that? Do you guys know why I went in front of Brian Laundrie's house with my bullhorn? Take a guess. Raise your hand way up high, folks. Put it way up there. You guys remember why? Because they had a watchful eye on Brian until they didn't. Right? They had a watchful eye on Brian until they didn't. And then we found out nobody knows where the hell Brian Laundrie is. And we were just assured by the chief of Northport Police Department, they knew exactly where Brian was. And then they get the 911 call from the parents saying, we have a missing person. Do you guys remember that? That was the beginning of Bullhorn Betty, right there. Because we were like, hell to the nah. But there was moreover, we were watching that case because of people reaching out to us from the distant part of the family, wanting us to get out there and just put our nose to the ground because they were on the east coast of Florida. So we were kind of encouraged, if you will, to be out there. But after we found out that Brian just slipped through the cracks, we were like full Bullhorn Betty. I don't know what else to say. Anyways, that's not this case, but I just want to remind you guys, we were told that they knew where he was. And we're being told by the people that aren't even affiliated with it. Now, mind you, that was the chief of police that should have known better, right? This is somebody that's believes or thinks or speculates that law enforcement knows exactly where he's at. But do they? I guarantee if they do not have him accounted for, they're not coming to the public at this point to tell us they don't know where he is. I don't see them ever doing that. I don't see them ever doing that until after he's charged. And let's not forget how many federal people we've got, America's Most Wanted on. So clearly people don't have a problem getting out of the clutches of that, law enforcement tail. Just saying. I mean, if you go and look at any of our America's Most Wanted, they managed to skirt the law. They managed to get away. I mean, look at we'll leave it at that. You guys get the point I'm trying to make. So, how long has he been missing? Well, think about it. What dates, if he came, let's calculate this. So he was, she went missing on April 4th. He was arrested on April 8th. He was released without charges on April 13th. And if I'm not mistaken, it was almost the very next day he left the Bahamas. It might have been the day after. So the 14th or 15th of April, that's it. I mean, he did that press, brigade of press where he sat down with, CBS and Bahamian News and 3 or 4 different news organizations. And that was him in the white shirt that says, basically says, if I'm going to keep searching for my wife, a higher power is going to have to stop me. That whole thing, I believe the very next day, he got up and loaded up on a plane and left. It might have been the 15th. It was the same day or just right before his daughter, Carly, was going there. She's only been out there once. And it was when she was going out there. Again, I don't know if it was the 15th, the 14th or the 15th, but it was somewhere around there. And I don't think we've heard him. I mean, we heard he was going to his mom's, but nobody has identified him ever making it. There was no photography from Daily Mail or any of the news out there seeing Brian walking to his mom's location. I have to think when they found out he was heading out to go see his mom that there was some type of news organization from Scripps or whatever the name of that is, NBC, ABC, Fox, the alphabet soup of our legacy media. You would think somebody would have been stalking that area for, newsworthiness. They're allowed to. It's lawful. It's legal. But you would have thought that somebody would have been sitting on the mom's house or location. But nobody ever said they saw him. And nobody has seen him since. Remember, the only time we assumed he was back in Michigan was because he hired a Michigan attorney. He had the attorney down in the Bahamas, and then all of a sudden he hires this Michigan attorney. And then we just heard recently he fired that lady attorney and hired himself an attorney that has gone against that worked for DOJ, the Department of Justice, which tells me he knows he's about to get federal charges somehow, some way. So, I mean, we're seeing this progression of attorneys, but one, where is he getting that money? And two, where has he been staying? We have no earthly idea. So he could be, yes, Jenna, he could literally be anywhere. Absolute anywhere. Now, it is speculated that he could be in that cabin, and I can't even remember, California, whatever. We heard it on Ashley Banfield while they were talking to the mom and the stepfather, Lynette's mom and stepfather. Lynette's mom's not taking this stuff very well at all. I can tell you that. Has anyone talked to an attorney about his whereabouts? I don't think any attorney would tell. I mean, I do know that somebody asked Terrell Butler, that was his attorney in the Bahamas, and she just repeated what she was authorized to say. Basically, he returned to the States to take care of his mom. But again, we learned from Carly that his mom has been in the same condition for pretty much, some time, that, she's older, but nothing new happened to her that would create this new urgency that he had that specific day. So that was kind of the telltale sign that he was using his mom as an excuse, because if he was really concerned about his mom's health, he probably should have been there a long time ago. Has Lynette been found? No, she has not. We were hopeful, but we hear the U.S. Coast Guard has already made it back to Florida. So the second search that they were doing, and I heard the second search was fairly thorough. You know, they had the rove machine, they had people on land, they had scuba divers in the water. I'm absolutely confident that they had, you know, their areas cordoned off, and they already had their jobs assigned to them before they even got out there. But, you know, just to me, I know if they searched everything, they searched everything. I just wish they would have been out there longer. You know what I'm saying? I kind of wish, I mean, especially since they didn't find her, I guess I was just hoping for them to be out there for a couple weeks, you know, because every search that I've ever been involved in or watched usually takes several weeks to locate the person, you know, with just steady at it. And it was just like, it was only a few days, you know, a couple days to a few days. And it just seemed like it just wasn't enough. I don't want to dog law enforcement or the United States Coast Guard in any way. I mean, bless them. I know that they went out there and did what they were going out there to do. So, you know, obviously they were never meant to stay out there for a couple weeks. But we also have to think of the other aspect of this, is that this is not the United States. This is a different country, and they have to ask permission to be there. They have to ask for permission to do an investigation on somebody in somebody else's country. And so they were provided approval for this very specific search. So I think that might have more to do with it than them just not, you know, not staying out there too long. I think they were required to tell them what they were searching and how long they would be. And so that's what they did. They sent them their whatever, their itinerary of what they're searching and what there would be. And that's what they got the approval to do. So the good news is they were able to pick up the dinghy. If there was any type of collection of evidence, you know, I'm pretty sure that was also turned over to the U.S. Coast Guard, but we don't know. I mean, what if they had videos? What if they had every step-by-step video of Lynette and Brian that day or even that week? You know, that would be good. But it's my understanding that the Bahamian police are relieved that the U.S. Coast Guard is taking the case over. It sounds like they don't really have the resources, nor do they want this investigation. This is an American-on-American crime, and they were, from my understanding, happy just to hand the case over and let our federal government take the lead on the investigation. So it is my belief that Brian in time will be arrested for this crime. I believe they are in the process of building a no-body homicide criminal action against him, but we won't know until we get further along. And there's still the possibility that she may still be found. You know, there's people out there, like her friends, Blaine and his wife, are still out there searching every nook and cranny for their friend. And I'm hoping that more people out in the Bahamas would get involved, you know. I don't have a passport, so me going down there and searching probably wouldn't happen. But, you know, my curiosity is always going to get the better of me if we can't find her, you know. So at some point, you know, would I go down there and search for her? Maybe I will, you know. But it's not going to be in the next, I don't know, at least in the next several months. I'm hopeful that she's found, but who knows? We might go out there and give it just a little, just a check, you know, what I think may have happened once I see a lay of the land, you know, where they were moored at, what is around them, you know, going back and seeing what were they at, where they've been. It might spark something, you know. She might be on land, maybe not even in a shallow grave. She might be just covered up with some shrubs and stuff taken way back in the forestry. You got to remember, he had 9 hours. 9 hours, he said it took him to cross from this side here over to this side here. This is the exact map that's in here. This is where they were This is where their boat was like right up here. This is where the Abaco Inn is, or Elbow Cay. I got the photo of the boat over Lubbers, and then you've got this 4-mile stretch right here over to Marsh Harbor where he said he washed up. But they were doing the searches down here at a abandoned harbor. So I don't know if Lynette would have been at this abandoned harbor. It's so close to Marsh Harbor that it makes me feel, unless the coordinates have him going back to the Soulmate, I think he might have thrown the keys around this area and paddled from this area up to where he said he washed up on the, the marsh, the harbor. So it's theories of mine, but it's theories of mine that I would really like to look at if she's not found. So we'll see where we are in about another month. And if in another month I still have this just lingering gut-wrenching feeling, I don't know, maybe I'll get my passport and start making plans to go to the Bahamas to see it, and to go there for scuba diving, taking a scuba person. I wouldn't be there by myself. I would have to take somebody or borrow somebody out there to go searching with me, because you never want to be alone, just to let you know. There could be bull sharks, there could be other sea life that you're not prepared to deal with, and if an injury does happen, you need to have somebody there to help call for help. So I don't know. I just might be something. It might be something. We'll see. We'll see what happens, But at the end of the day, Lynette needs to be found. She hasn't been found. Obviously, we're learning what we've been feeling this whole time, that Brian's story was horseshit. And that's all that needs to be said at this point. His story was horseshit. He's the only person around her. He was the only person beating on her for 25 years. At the end of the day, people just don't vanish into thin air. And if she really did fall off that dinghy, her body would have washed ashore. Where is she? Okay? The only time bodies just disappear is when people don't want them found. So this doesn't make sense. It never made sense. Her hairdressing, her bright blue Conch Republic hairdressing was not found. Her dry bag was not found. Her fanny pack was not found. The keys were never found. Nothing related to her, what she was wearing, but her pink pewter watch, her powder pink watch, her Apple Watch that was observed on her wrist earlier that day was found on the Soulmate by the Bahamian police. Make that make sense. He's saying they never made it back to the Soulmate. Well, then how did a watch that was observed on her wrist at the Abaco Inn that they left? Remember, they left the Abaco Inn. She was riding on the dinghy about 10 minutes before this lone wave knocked her off the dinghy and swept her out to sea. That means she never made it back to the Soulmate. So if she never made it back to the Soulmate, how did her watch get on the Soulmate that she had when she disappeared? So that's where we're at. All right, guys, I love you. God bless you. We'll be back. We're going to continue to cover this case. We are covering also Nancy Guthrie's case. Now, we're having an advocacy issue on the Nancy Guthrie case. We need everybody's help. If you guys did not watch my video, please go over to my channel here on TikTok and watch my video about Nancy Guthrie. The Pima County Sheriff is violating people's rights. Not just their rights, their constitutional and civil rights. And we need to help the people out there. And so I have something that I think everybody would love to participate in, because this is something that we have to protect for every one of us, right? We all have our freedoms. We all have our civil rights. We all have our freedoms of speech, and we need to protect that more than anything, especially in the climate that we're in today. So please join me as we fight the Pima County Sheriff to quit harassing people out there, apply the law equally, and follow the Constitution of their state as well as the federal government's Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. So hopefully you guys get over there, you check that out, you go over to the Facebook, you get the form letter, you print it out, you sign your name to it, and you mail it off. I would greatly appreciate each and every one of you guys doing that. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we will be back in the near future.